Hi friends, welcome back. I'm going to talk about how to copper leaf a hypertufa container and apply a patina to it. I'll give you step-by-step instructions and all the materials and everything you need. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my very new channel. I'm going to try to continue to create more content about all the various kinds of creative projects that I do all the time, from hypertufa to gardening and plants and painting and all kinds of things. So join me. Let's go. We are going to need copper leaf. Make sure that it's real copper and not like a copper color. It should be actual copper. Some kind of adhesive. I prefer brush-on adhesive, but you could use spray adhesive if you like it better. You're going to need a brush for the adhesive, and then you'll need a brush for pouncing on the copper leaf, which you'll see later. I like this brush, which is actually designed for bookmaking. It's flat on the edge and kind of a big round brush with really stiff bristles. It's great for pouncing the copper leaf into the adhesive once it's sticky. You'll see as we go along. Let's paint on the adhesive. Dip your brush in the glue and paint it on. I usually do like 3 sides at a time, or maybe 3 sides in the bottom or 3 sides in the top, just so that there's part of it that I can still touch and it won't be sticky. So let's speed through this. When you're finished applying the adhesive to approximately half of your project, you're going to let it sit until it's tacky and basically dry. Now that your adhesive is basically dry, it should feel sticky, tacky to the touch, and it should look clear. If you used spray adhesive, you would probably do this slightly differently, but I always use liquid adhesive and brush it on. So once it's tacky and clear, you take your copper leaf and you're just basically going to stick it to the adhesive, and you can do it however you want to. You'll find as you work with the copper leaf that it's very, very, very thin and light, and it can be difficult to work with. Part of what is the struggle usually for me when I'm working with it is that it folds up on itself or it flies away. So you kind of have to be careful in applying it. And I find that it's easiest to just roll the piece onto the copper leaf. If I'm doing something really big, I can't do it that way. I have to lift the copper leaf up, and I usually do it with the whole book of leaf so that the leaf doesn't break. If you try to peel the leaf off and just stick it to your project, the leaf is going to crumple up immediately and stick to itself, and then you'll have a bunch of pieces of leaf that are flying in the air, and it's a huge mess. So the best way to do it is to try to keep the leaf on your tissue paper book until you press it onto the piece that you're leafing. Then I take the brush and I pounce the brush on it to press the leaf into all of the little divots in the hypertufa. And you're going to find that you'll have areas that remain blank and little holes that are created when you press it in. And you have a couple of choices when you do that. You can apply the copper leaf that's left over into those holes, and it should stick because there should be adhesive under there. Sometimes you might have to apply adhesive again to the areas that are blank so that it will stick. For me, I'm kind of aiming for making things look old and ancient, so I don't mind if there are some spots where the copper leaf isn't entirely covering every tiny millimeter of my piece. With that said, if there's too much space where it's not covering, you're going to end up with sticky adhesive that is exposed, and the adhesive is gonna come off. And sometimes if the adhesive is exposed in areas, it can pull off some of the copper leaf from other areas. So you kind of have to watch out for that. So you will keep doing this process until all of the parts of the project that have adhesive on them are coated with copper leaf. And when you cover different areas. If you overlap the copper leaf, the part that you're overlapping onto copper that's already stuck to the project, it's not going to stick. So that's not that big of a deal. You'll just pull it off. And you'll notice that I am kind of grabbing little pieces of copper leaf because I don't like to waste things. So I use my brush and I will grab little pieces of copper leaf that have fallen off and press them onto the tiny areas where the adhesive is still exposed. And notice how I'm really pouncing. It's pretty hard. It's a firm pressure that you're using with your stiff, flat brush to pounce the copper leaf into the crevices and spaces. I don't usually cover the insides of my containers because they're going to have dirt in them and I won't be able to see it. So, as I said before, I don't like to waste materials. So you keep at it until it's all covered. And let's speed this up again. And then when it's done, obviously this is a different piece, but you'll have a copper leafed hypertufa piece, and you can leave it like that, or you can go on to the next step, which is giving it a patina. We will need white vinegar, a bowl of some sort, obviously whatever you just put copper leaf on, pair of gloves, salt, I like to use kosher salt, and some paper towels. We're going to do this outside, and you'll need something to cover it or a plastic bag to put it in while it kind of sits. So I guess you don't have to do this outside, but I prefer to do it outside because I don't want the inside of my apartment to smell like straight vinegar. So wherever you choose to do it, let's go. So what you're trying to do is create a chemical reaction between the copper, the vinegar, which is an acid, and the salt. And if you've watched my video about acid stains, it's kind of a similar process in terms of coloring, but you're working with pure copper leaf and the acid being the vinegar, which you would also use in an acid stain, and salt being the salt instead of a metal salt, which is what we use in acid staining. So the challenge in doing this is that the copper leaf is really thin, and the vinegar is an acid, so it can eat away at the copper. So you have to kind of be careful not to leave it too long. So you will coat it with vinegar and then sprinkle salt on it. And often I feel like I can immediately see the reaction starting. You also want to have it, it's hard to get the vinegar to stick to it. So I like to put it in a container where it's going to have vinegar fumes kind of rising around it. You can do that like I did in this example with a paper towel and a bowl. You don't want it to sit in a pool of vinegar because that part will not develop a patina because it needs the air. So you kind of have to play with it. You can also elevate it where you have some vinegar in the bottom and put rocks or something under it so that it is above it. You could also just put it in a plastic bag and cover it so that the vinegar is surrounding it. You kind of have to play with it and see what works for you. So leave it, let it sit for maybe 15-20 minutes. Let's do it again on a different piece and talk in more detail about the steps. First step, which is coming very slowly, is to pour vinegar on the piece. It can be hard to get it to stick, and the salt can help the vinegar adhere to the piece because that copper leaf is pretty slick and it tends to just slide right off. That's the biggest challenge to doing this method and getting a patina on it, is getting the vinegar to stay on the piece but not submerge it where it doesn't get any oxygen and won't create a reaction. So you will coat it in vinegar and coat it in salt as effectively as you can. And let's speed it up. In this example, I put rocks under it to hold it above the vinegar while it's still getting all of the fumes of the vinegar. And sometimes after I check it after a little while, I have to go back and add more vinegar and let it sit for longer. You generally don't want to let it sit for too long because it will eat the copper off. The vinegar will. Once it gets to a point that you like how it looks, then you should rinse it off. And if you really want to neutralize the reaction, a smart thing to do would be to dip it in a baking soda water bath. So just put a little bit of baking soda in the water and dip the piece in it just to clean it off, and the baking soda will neutralize the acid in the vinegar. And in this example, I wrapped it loosely with paper towel. It's still really important that you make sure that air is getting to the piece, because if there's no air, you're not going to get a reaction. And then let it sit and check on it periodically and see how it's looking. And the big reveal, unwrap it and see how it looks, and you can see that the reaction has occurred and we've developed some blue and green areas, and I like to have some areas of copper that are still showing. You can do it however you want. It's not a very controllable process, so I say do it however you want. You're gonna have to try it and see how it comes out. And here is a finished piece. So it'll come out looking something like this, but honestly, it comes out differently every single time. And that's it. You have applied copper leaf. You have created a patina. Your stuff looks beautiful and gorgeous, and you should continue to make it. So if you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing to my channel. The more subscribers I have, the more time I can commit to making these tutorials for you guys. Thanks so much.